Let's talk about using sources. So this presentation is called Responding to Sources. This will show you how to respond to sources and include them in your work. So as we all probably are aware of, we have three ways we can respond. We can agree, we can disagree, or we could both agree and disagree, agreeing with part of what a source says but disagreeing with others. And that's most likely the common way that we respond to most sources. Whether we use that in our papers or not, it just depends on what we're trying to do. So when you are working with your source, you need to think about your topic. You need to think about your thesis that you're trying to promote and defend. And you want to ask yourself, where do I stand? So readers need to know where the writer stands relative to the ideas that are being cited. That's one of the reasons why we say you can't just dump a quote and run. You have to interact with the material. Otherwise, you're expecting the reader to read your mind, when what you want is for them to read your writing and to read your work. Right? So this comes through the complexity, subtlety, and originality of the writer's response. When you agree with your source, you have to do more than just echo it. You have to do more than just say, I agree with Jones. You have to add something. So maybe that's going to be a different line of reasoning or some unnoticed or kind of overlooked evidence. Maybe you've got some personal experience or situations that you can use to show why you agree. Or maybe you're able to translate the situation for people who aren't familiar with it, that show why you agree with this source. So some examples of that would be, I agree that whatever it is, because my experience with whatever it is confirms it. So for example, with the work that I had been doing, I agree that yoga is beneficial exercise because my experience with daily yoga practice confirms it. X is surely right about yoga because, as she may not be aware, recent studies have shown that a regular and varied yoga practice is just as good or better than any other form of exercise. X's theory of yoga is extremely useful because it sheds light on the difficult problem of determining what is the best form of exercise for any different person, any given person. And those unfamiliar with this school of thought may be interested to know that it basically boils down to the best exercise being the one that you'll do. So those are the different examples of the way that you can agree. And this last one is that idea of translating it into something that people could be more familiar with. I disagree. So when you disagree, again, you have to do more than just state your disagreement. You have to give reasons for the disagreement. Maybe there's missing information, or the evidence is incomplete or faulty, or there are questionable assumptions, there's flawed logic, contradictory ideas, or it overlooks the real issue. Maybe it just merely states the obvious, and you can use logic and evidence that actually supports the writer's position. So some ways that you can disagree. X is mistaken because she overlooks, then explain what it is that's being overlooked. X's claim that rests on the questionable assumption that. I disagree with X's view because, as recent research has shown, X contradicts himself. On the one hand, he argues. On the other hand, he also says, by focusing on one thing, X overlooks the deeper problem of. So you'd fill in your information with, where these ellipses, the three dots are. You can also agree and disagree. That makes the argument more complex and nuanced while maintaining a clear, reader-friendly framework. So it makes it more complex and nuanced because it shows that you are engaging with your sources on a critical level, meaning that you're thinking about what's good and what's bad, what's right and what's wrong, and realizing that more often than not, there's an element of both good and bad and right and wrong in any argument that's made. And so instead of saying, well, I disagree with that one point, therefore the whole argument is bad, you're saying, well, I disagree with this part, but I do understand the reasoning in this part. And this part actually supports what I'm trying to say. And then you can tip more toward agreement or disagreement. So it's not like you have to be completely balanced and neutral, but you can be more in the agreement range, but disagree with one little part. So ways to agree and disagree. We have some templates here. Although I agree with X up to a point, I cannot accept his overriding assumption that. Although I disagree with much that X says, I fully endorse his final conclusion that. Though I concede that, I still insist that. X is right, that, but she seems on more dubious ground when she claims this other thing. While X is probably wrong when she claims that, she is right, whereas X provides ample evidence for one thing. Y and Z's research on this and the other convinces me of this other view instead. My feelings on the issue are mixed. I don't support X's position, but I find Y's argument and Z's research to be equally persuasive. So I don't know what to do here. So those are some ways that you can integrate your sources more than just dumping and running. And even though it's not shown on here with these templates that we have, don't forget that you do need to make sure you're following the procedures for MLA citations, in that you need to give clear information about where you're getting the source. You don't need the parenthetical citations, the parentheses at the end. You won't find those in most short articles. But where you have names, you need to be clear about those names. Where you have information about their background, so, you know, X could be Robin Jones, professor of linguistics at Harvard University, okay? That would be, you know, so instead of just X right there, you would put that information in the first time you would use it, and then after that, you just refer to Jones, right? So if you have questions about that, of course, please contact me. Otherwise, I will let you get back to what you were doing.